Alright, here's your review for the UK EU Unit 1. First off to start, the Constitution of the Crown, that's for the UK. They don't have a written constitution, but get a lot of their components from things like the Magna Carta, Bill of Rights, court rulings that set precedents. This is known as common law. They also have traditions and other laws that are written down over time. Devolution is occurring by the British government, UK government, giving power to the Wales and Northern Ireland Assembly, as well as the Scotland Parliament. Also, the Mayor of London is gaining more power. Immigration has changed today. A lot of asylum seekers, refugees, are going to the UK, also because of the EU open immigration policy. More individuals from Europe are going, but the largest non-European immigrant group would be from India. That's because they were a former colony, followed by Pakistan. Linkage institutions in the UK, political parties, unions, quangos, the media. The Conservative Party and Liberal Democrats formed a coalition government in 2010 because no one gained a majority. So going down to 7. Conservatives had the most votes, didn't have the majority of the Labour Party, which was the second largest party, followed by Liberal Democrats with the third. So the third largest party joined the Conservatives to join that or create that coalition. The Conservative Party has a couple different wings: the traditional and the Thatcherites, and the traditional conservatives would value the noblesse oblige, the principle that the rich or the well-off take care of the poor. We watched the alternate vote video. That would be voting by preference, listing them in order. The group or individual that gains the lowest percentage is eliminated. Those votes go towards another individual until someone gains a majority. Quangos, interest groups, this idea of neo-corporatism where interest groups are taking the lead to create public policy. They're closely connected to the government, usually created by acts of parliament and publicly funded. Okay, the British Supreme Court has powers to overhear appeals. However, they're limited by the parliamentary sovereignty, the idea that Parliament is the last say and has all the power. Some of the characteristics of the British political system: first past the post, single member districts. They do have two houses, bicameral system, so House of Commons and the House of Lords. They have a large bureaucracy, individuals working to help create public policy and implement and make sure it's executed. They do have a Supreme Court, and they are run by the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister operates in the legislative branch. The coalition cabinet, again, is two parties that combine to make a majority. Those parties are then in charge of the policy making. The checks that are on the British cabinet, so the party that's in charge, are the opposition party, and the biggest check is the shadow cabinet, the leaders of the opposition party. MPs, members of Parliament, the House of Commons, debate, they write bills, they amend bills, they vote in the Prime Minister of the majority party, they vote on bills. The Labour Party, when they were in charge between 1999 and 2010, decided to reorganize the House of Lords, and the biggest thing they wanted to get done was to decrease the amount of hereditary members. Top level bureaucrats are become experts because they are on the job as a career and they stay within one area and continue to work, whereas cabinet members are appointed and work for a very limited time. Thatcherites would be an opponent of the National Health Service. They wanted to cut government spending. They weren't big on the idea of noblesse oblige, helping out the poor. So those Thatcher followers would not be big supporters of the NHS. International event that harmed the Blair government, Tony Blair, was the Iraq War and supporting it. Proportional election system creates more competitive political parties. That's due to the fact that a percentage is gained, or seats are gained by the percentage that you're voted on instead of just first past the post or one winner. The EU right now is facing border control, economic challenges, as well as Britain leaving. Devolution is occurring in the UK, And what has it allowed? It's allowed small and separatist parties such as the Scottish Nationalist Party to gain more power in those countries. If there's a vote of no confidence, what that means, there's a bill that's put up that could be close, could pass, could not pass. If the bill does pass, which is a win, that party, the majority party, remains in office. If the bill does not pass, the prime minister must resign. Parliament is dissolved, and they must call for a new general election. The Democrat deficit in the EU just means that most policymaking decisions are being made by non-elected officials. The officials that are making a lot of the policies within the EU are appointed by members of that member state, so they're not directly elected by the people. Who selects the head of the government? British government, it's the majority party in the House of Commons, which is the Prime Minister. A unitary system like the UK has is one central government, one geographic location, and that body of government makes all the laws for the whole country. UK is known as a welfare state, meaning helping citizens, providing benefits and social programs. Again, the rich are helping out the poor. Some examples are listed below. NHS is the biggest one. Disability insurance, programs for the homeless. Devolution is decentralization of central powers to local units of government, so passing down powers and responsibilities to local units. The Scottish Parliament and the Welsh Northern Ireland Assemblies are gaining these powers. It's different from federalism because power can be taken back. It doesn't have to be uniform, so the Scottish Parliament could have different powers than the Northern Ireland Assembly, and it's also not written down anywhere in the Constitution. Single member winner-take-all system. Whoever gets the most vote, it doesn't have to have a majority, wins the election. Usually leads to a two-party system. Versus the proportional system. Everyone's gaining a percentage of votes, which equals the amount of seats. Sometimes there's a threshold, but this also can create a multi-party system. More parties have the chance of winning and participating in the legislative branch. Just comparing and contrasting different systems. We know about the United States systems versus the UK. So the Prime Minister runs as an MP, so gets elected into the legislative body, and then is selected by the majority party to serve as the Prime Minister, versus the President, who is separate, operating on his or her own, runs in their own election, winner take all, and is elected by the people. Removal of those two individuals, the Prime Minister can be removed by a vote of no confidence. Also, there can be internal party decision where they can force the Prime Minister to step down, versus the President, the legislative branch, removes them through the impeachment process. A couple things I added here. The referendum is a general vote by the electorate. It's a political question, usually yes or no. Often it does not have any bearing. They just want to see whether or not people agree with something. But in the example of the EU exit or the Brexit vote, the people decided, and this is something that politicians like to do because then the power is given back to the people and people are re-engaged in the political system. This power is held by the Prime Minister in the UK to call for a referendum. And the last one, federalism, touched on it briefly. Authority shared by national and local governments must be found in the Constitution. The local governments always have equal powers, and the power is divided between the federal government and the local governments.